Hi everybody, Richard here with EduData Consulting, and welcome back to Curriculum Mapping with Google Workspace. In my last video, I had demonstrated an updated workflow to data collection, and I hinted that this would have implications in terms of how our Data Studio dashboard can look and what it can do for us. So before I reveal the dashboard, I do want to take a step back and start with the point of view from an individual teacher and kind of reinforce why this data collection is important from the role of the individual teacher and how it builds to a collective data set that everybody can explore and benefit from. So if we open up an existing unit planner in our map, like this one on linear functions, and let's say it's been completed, and if we just explore the data that has been attached to this document, and when I say attached, it doesn't necessarily mean directly in this document, but it could be data that is mapped to a spreadsheet or stored in the metadata of this document, right? So every Google Doc also has a field for metadata that can house information that can be retrieved whenever you need that information to be retrieved. So let's talk about the side panel. So right away we can see we are storing data around who is teaching this class. So that's what this first section up here is for. And again, we can read and write this data to our spreadsheet directly from the add-on. So that's one piece of data. If we go further down into the unit planner data section, we've got course data, grade level, subject area, start and end dates. Okay, so all of this data is actually being mapped to the metadata of this document. So wherever this document travels, we can retrieve this exact same information with this add-on because this data here is stored in the metadata of this given document. Also in that metadata is the URL to the resource folder. So again, this is one way of mapping a collection of resources stored in a folder to a document that is sort of giving our plan for that unit in that course. In my last video, we went into detail. I won't show you this now, but we can collect data such as apps we use during this unit or any other category of data that our school is interested in collecting about what happens during this unit. We can define that and store that. This data is stored in a spreadsheet. And then finally, we can view or remove the standards that have been attached. And we can also attach a variety of standards based on their themes or subjects or categories of those standards. And when we attach those are being attached to a spreadsheet that is in line with the document ID of that Google Doc. So all that to say is that we are strategically collecting data in predictable places that we can then use to build a meaningful dashboard that tells the story of the school's curriculum. So let's jump on over to that dashboard. So I've hyperlinked it here directly in the add-on for easy access to anyone who's using it. And you can see right off the bat, it consists of 3 different pages here. And I want to talk about each page separately. So in this first page, you can kind of imagine this as something as a navigation dashboard. So if I need to find something, I can use this to navigate to it by using the filters, right? So I could filter by a teacher's name. I could filter by a course or a grade level. and I could get to the information, and there are hyperlinks to open those documents. For example, that linear functions document that we have open here, I can actually get right back to it simply by clicking in our dashboard. I can also access that unit's resource folder if I just need to go directly in there and pull a resource from that specific unit's resource folder. So that's easy enough and that's understandable, but where this gets really interesting is when we can start filtering the data and watching the dashboard dynamically respond to our clicks. So if I want to learn more about this linear functions unit, I can click on it, and it's going to filter all of the standards that have been attached to that specific unit, as well as the tags. In this case, these are the apps that have been attached by the teacher to this given unit, right? So I can clearly see what is happening in terms of standards and other tags I've defined in my curriculum and where those are being utilized. Same thing if I click on this sample unit. Notice that here I can tell, oh, this teacher has not yet attached any standards to this particular unit, and there's only a couple of apps here that I see present in this unit in terms of being attached. So if you were to extrapolate this over hundreds of units, you can start to imagine the data set forming here that you could go into and explore and ask questions, investigate, so on and so forth. So that's kind of the purpose of that first page, is for some brief analysis as well as some navigation that can be useful for everybody in the school community. With that data, we can also present some of the timeline pieces visually, right? So again, if we had more units than this in the curriculum, we could have all of the units laid out on a timeline, and again we could apply the same strategy of these filters along the top on this timeline to again see an entire course kind of over the stretch of an academic year, or a subject area, or we could look at two subject areas and kind of see where there may be overlapping themes. There's all kinds of opportunities to really explore it just through the lens of dates and topic areas. And then more from an administrative standpoint, we could also establish these tables to find the gaps, right? So in all this data, we can count sort of the number of occurrences of standards or tags. And here we can explore where the zeros are, and we can leverage these sliders in terms of just honing in on the ones that are zeros, so we can kind of narrow down what are the standards that we have yet to map in our curriculum, and then go about coming up with a strategy of how do we put them in, where do they make sense to go in, all that in the interest of just making our units as complete as possible in our curriculum. So again, this is just 3 pages, and because all of this data lives in the Google Sheets in your own share drive, you can be as creative as you want to be with looking at that data with your school community. So there it is. I just wanted to share those pieces of information related to the data collection and how it can impact the dashboard that goes along with that data collection. Thanks for watching. Bye.